I know you're shocked by the title. Like, how can I say something like that? You must think that, I'm a misogynist, I'm a racist, Islamophobic, transphobic. You can label me all you want, but you have to listen to this because the mainstream media will never cover this. Okay, I'm not saying that, oh, we need to ban women to go to universities, but I think honestly, society needs to encourage more men to go to universities. But I don't even think that's the case anymore. I think there's way too much indoctrination going on, and you're better off without getting education. You should go to trade school. So the mainstream media in the West, they always want to bring up this narrative of the gender pay gap. But they never talk about news like this. Do you know what happened in Google in 2018? So they actually faced a lawsuit from their female employees. They're saying that their male counterparts were getting paid way more versus them. So Google actually did a very detailed research. So what ended up happening is that when they examined the payroll of all of their company's employees, they actually found that if men and women were working the same position, they have the same years of a work experience, and they have the same qualifications, women were actually getting paid way more than the man. It was anywhere between 10 to 20%. If you think I'm making this up, look up what happened to Google in 2018. Got a Snapchat there. So Google actually was forced to pay their male employees 9.7 million US dollars in compensation because they were actually paying their female counterparts way more versus their male counterparts, given the same years of work experience. Okay. Do you know how the government and mainstream media they push the pay gap? So the pay gap, okay, this has been debunked so many times that they keep bringing it back up. It compares all the jobs the men are working versus all the jobs the women are working. So which is complete bogus. For example, if you look at engineering, okay, 90% of the engineers are men, okay? That's just a fact. If you look at nursing, 90% of the nurses are women. Obviously, if someone's an engineer, they're gonna make more money versus the woman. So women are actually doing this purposefully, okay? You deserve less because you are choosing the job that pays less, okay? And listen, this thing is actually biological. The male and the female brain is very different. You know the mainstream media, right? They're always pushing that more women in STEM, more women in STEM, okay? But however, if you walk into any university, literally because of programs like diversity, equity, inclusion, okay, they're literally forced to accept more female applicants, even though they have lower grades into universities. But however, if you walk into, let's say, a math or a biotechnology program or a chemistry program, almost every single student you see is a man. This is because men are more interested in things and women are more interested in people. This is why women are more likely to become, let's say, a personal support worker or a sign language interpreter or a nurse working at a retirement home or a teacher in pre-kindergarten education, okay? Men and women are different. XX will never equal to XY, and that is totally okay. You cannot keep forcing this agenda onto people. And did you know that there's a website? It's called the Statistics Canada. And they have the most comprehensive, the most detailed report on anything you can think of in Canada. Every single statistic there is. If you actually go on there and do a little bit of research, you'll actually be shocked. And I think a lot of women do realize this. For example, if you enter the city of Toronto, city of Ottawa, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, and if you look into the payroll, if you add the filter, years of a work experience, if you add the filter, the same occupation, if you add the filter, the same job qualification, women are actually getting paid way more than men, anywhere between 5 to 10%. And in the STEM field, women are getting paid between 10 to 20% more versus their male counterparts, 10 to 20% more. And do you know why that's happening? I can tell you the exact reason why that's happening. So, as I mentioned before, this is biological. Men are more interested in things. That's why they choose more careers like STEM, and women are more interested in people. However, the government, and this is not just the Canadian government, the US government, the UK government, Australian government, the French government, they all do the same thing. They're forcing this quota onto its population, which is destroying our society. So, for example, in Canada, many workplaces, they have a quota for hiring 50% women. Many engineering companies and many schools have this quota forced up onto them. And let's say that, the Ontario University Association, let's say they wanted to hire 100 math professors that, let's say, they make between 150K to 200K a year, okay? Guess what? Almost all of the applicants, anywhere between 90 to 95%, are going to be men. So what happens when you force this 50-50 quota? The university will literally have to hire women who are less qualified. what they're doing is that many of these places, the government of Canada does the same thing, and I would say at least 50% of workplaces in Canada does the exact same practice. So they're turning away men who are way more qualified. Okay, who have straight A grades, men who have all the certifications, they have their masters, they have PhDs, and they're rejecting this man, and they're forced to accept a woman with, let's say, a 75% average during their undergrad with no work experience. I believe this is part of the reason why people are getting dumber and dumber. Because if you look at the IQ scores in many Western countries, it was going up for many, many decades, up until the millennials. But starting in Gen Z, in every single country in Canada, United States, and throughout the Western Europe, the IQ of the Gen Z children are actually dropping because they don't hire on the basis of meritocracy anymore. They're hiring on the basis because of a bullshit woke agenda. And this practice is extremely dangerous, okay? And like I said, it's not just happening in the West. So if you look at the divorce rates in China, okay, in Taiwan, in Singapore, in South Korea, in Japan, it's over 50%. These are some of the most developed countries in the world. These are some of the most literate countries in the world where they emphasize so much on education, where almost everybody, especially the women, are going to universities. And if you guys are following these new reports, they say that by 2030, over 70% of the university students will be women. Over 70%. Here's an interesting stat. So in 2019, China's divorce rate reached 50.7%, which, I mean, that is absolutely devastating. The nuclear family, that's gone. However, who is filing for the divorce? Have you ever thought about that? In 2019, 4.3 million couples filed for divorce. 4.3 million couples, okay? Families being torn apart. 73% of these divorces are initiated by the woman. That's not what's the scary part, okay? If you look at, if you add a filter on there, what about women with university degrees, okay? I guarantee you, look at the stats in Canada, in the United States, all over Western Europe, in China and Japan, is anywhere between 95 to 99%, okay? Almost all the divorces being filed in the developed world are being filed by women with university degrees or above. So why is that happening? Okay, I can give you the perfect explanation. You will see how scary it is. This is what I'm talking about. We have so many women going to universities, they actually end up destroying themselves. Okay, this is an attack against men and attack against women, and this is an attack on the nuclear family. And I do believe this is a global agenda because it's not just happening in the West, it's happening in many parts in Asia as well. Do you know why, for example, if you look at, let's say, two people working, let's say I'm in Ottawa, I'm in the capital of Canada. If two people are working at the same job, let's say at the Canadian government, let's say after 5 years, the man's making significantly more money versus the woman. You have to look at why that's happening, okay? This is why the wage gap is a hoax, because women bear children. Okay, let's say if you're fresh out of university and you get the same job as another guy that graduated in the same class as you, and you guys both get a government job. Let's say if you're making 60K Canadian, that's what, maybe 45, 46K US dollars. Doesn't sound like much, but that's pretty good for a starting wage because they do go up very fast. They move up the ranks of the government. However, what if this new hire, this new young lady, she gets married and she has 3 children. She takes 3 maternity leaves for the next 5 years. While this guy is out there, he continues to work his ass off 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week in order to move up the corporate ladder. So after this woman has 3 children, she comes back from 3 maternity leaves. Who do you think is going to be making more money? Obviously, the guy's going to be making more money. Do you see where I'm getting at? Okay, I want you to keep following this path. So the reason why there's a population collapse in developed countries, China's birth rate right now is 1.08 children per family. I have to emphasize the replacement rate is 2.1. In Taiwan's 0.87. In Japan, it's 1.16. And in South Korea, which is the lowest in the world, it's 0.78. So the reason why when a woman has a university degree, and if her marriage goes south, she's almost guaranteed to file for the divorce. And the vast majority of women with university degrees do not want to have children. It's because they realize this. Okay, if you're a 23-year-old fresh out of university, you go to the workplace, you're gonna think that, okay, right now I'm making 60K a year. It's not great, it's not terrible, but I can move up. Now this woman's going to think that, okay, if I actually marry my boyfriend right now, if I decided to have 3 children, 5 years from now, my salary is gonna go maybe from 60K to 70K. It's barely gonna change because I haven't put the hours in, I haven't put the work in. But if I ditch my husband, and if I decide to not have children, if I decide to be single and childless and to be a boss babe, 5 years from now, I can also make 120K. And she's also gonna think that, wait, Wait, after that, I can go back to school. I can get my master's. I can get my PhD. And in 10 to 15 years' time, I can move my way up the corporate ladder. I can become a CEO. I can be making 200,000, 250,000, $300,000 a year. And at this point, she's going to think that her man and her possibly having children in the future, those are going to be roadblocks. Those become burdens for her. And this is the reason why so many women with universities will file for divorce. She's going to say that I am now independent of man, okay? And I can finally use my own money. I can go buy Gucci. I can go buy Louis Vuitton. See, men and women think very differently. When the man finally makes money, he's gonna think that, you know what? Now I can finally provide for a girl. I can find the girl of my dream. I can start a family with her. I can put a roof over her head. I can buy a house in the suburbs. I can put food on the table. I can finally raise a family. However, when a woman makes money, the first thing that pops into her head is that she thinks that, oh, now I'm independent from man. I can now be a boss babe. You can disagree all you want, but just search up the marriage statistics. Okay, they're available in every single developed country. The vast majority of all divorces in the developed world are being filed by women with university degrees. That is a fact, because this is exactly how I think. They think, now I have a career path. I'm independent from man. This is how they pull apart the nuclear family. This is how a society dies out. This is why all of these Asian countries and these European countries have extremely low birth rates. And ladies, I'm not trying to be a misogynist. This is why almost every single person on the top of the corporate ladder, all the CEOs, all the millionaires are men. It's because think of it like this, okay? If you're at home taking care of children, which is perfectly fine, while your husband is out there, working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, grinding his way to the top, obviously that guy is going to get a promotion versus a woman who can only work 35 to 40 hours a week. She's forced to take many sick days and also maternity leaves due to taking care of her children. That is totally fine. And it's because of this, men generally work way more than women. It's because they have a family they have to provide to. And so many people still don't understand this concept. And I think many people do. They just refuse to accept the reality. You cannot make man and woman equal. And right now, all these diversity quotas, it's an attack on man, it's an attack on woman, and it's destroying everybody in this world. I'll give you another reason why, ladies, okay? You can only choose one out of two. Either you choose a family or you choose your career. You cannot have both. It's not almost impossible. I'm wearing a Friends t-shirt, Unagi. Many of you guys seen that famous episode. Do you remember Ross and Rachel, their first breakup when they went on a break? It's extremely difficult to be a career woman. It's much easier to be a stay-at-home and nurturing mother, to be spending time with your children. In order to make your way up the corporate ladder, to get to 150K, 200K, 300K, you will have to accept the 996 lifestyle. Do you know what the 996 means? 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. Okay? This is the only way to get to the top of the corporate ladder. It is a dogfight. Because if you don't do it, somebody else will, okay? It is called the top 1% for a reason. Only a small percentage of people will make their way to the top. And let's say, if you're just starting out at your new government job or at the bank and you want to make your way to the top and you have to put the hours in, you're forced to work 72 hours a week. This is also part of the reason why 1 out of every 4 marriages is sexless now, because you grow apart from your husband, from your boyfriend. Your relationship grows apart. You have less time for each other. You grow cold. This is how a couple drifts apart from their relationship, from their marriage. This is why the divorce rate is so high. As time goes on, there will be less and less men going to universities. Universities will be dominated by women. I think this trend is going to be a disaster.